first thing, putting the bank to one side, the first thing is leverage is required. That's not required, but you know, I wouldn't bank your hopes on getting any money if there's no leverage in there. Let's put it that way. Is that probably a better way to say it? And we talked to Andrew about this last night, so I just want to relay. This is what we're saying, Andrew. Yes, this is the right thing to say. Real money. That's what I want to say. Leverage with real money. I was in one of the sites the other day, the chief executive said, "Do you mean real money?" And I said, "Yeah, I mean real money." And then I was thinking, shit, I hope that's the right thing to say. It was the right thing to say. Real money. So, not make-believe money. You know what I mean by... I don't need to describe that. You all know what I mean by make-believe money. And there was quite a lot of make-believe money, actually. If we'd added up all the make-believe money in the Phase 1 proposals, we could probably refloat the economy. But this time, we have to have real money only. And people will be finding out whether that money actually comes on board later on. So that's the bit that's clear. And I just wanted to say something about the 2%. Question from Leicester here. The 2% is not a requirement. The 2% is our estimate of A, what is a reasonable amount of money to find when we do a Fundmap that can be shifted that doesn't have a detrimental effect on child outcomes. So we've done this Fundmap now dozens and dozens and dozens of times. We always find between 2 and 5% where we know that where that money's shifted, it doesn't really affect child outcomes in a negative way. B, that when we've modelled this and have used that 2% of expenditure on a portfolio of science-based or evidence-based activities, it's sufficient to achieve outcomes at a population level. And C, and critically, it's not too much money that leads to poor implementation. Because if you try to do too many things too quickly, you get poor implementation. If you get poor implementation, you don't get the outcomes that you're going after. So it's a rule of thumb that's come from our work. So I don't want you sitting there thinking, if we don't get 2% of overall expenditure in the bid, lottery are going to say no. But what the lottery will be very eagle-eyed about is whether it's real money on the table. And that means moving money from one pot into another pot with all the complications and difficulties that goes with it. And so let's just talk about, what the bank means as a concept. So the basic idea is, as you know, let's say that all health, education, social care, police, youth justice, they all pony up a bit of money each, 2, 3, 4 million each, that adds up to a pot of money that comes to £10 million for the sake of argument. And generally what happens is that those agencies retain those funds. And when they retain those funds, their commitment to how those funds will be spent change over time. So they're really committed to this process in 2014. And then a new director for the yacht comes in and says, well, actually, what the heck are we doing this for? And then that commitment goes away. So what the bank does is it requires you to commit to put money in to a different pot, and the accountability for that pot goes away from me and youth justice to everybody else sitting around the table, including me, because I put the money in. So I'm not losing control over that money altogether, but I'm now having a say about how that money's spent collectively. That's why it is such a powerful tool, because it immediately shifts you from accountability for the funds from one agency into shared accountability. And suddenly you've got an investment pot of money to spend on outcomes or possibly on return on investment. So that's all it is in the end. With we will talk about the kind of how it gets done and so forth in a moment. But that's the basic concept that we want to be able to get to. And Dartington, some of you came to this process with that idea in mind. There was in your proposals it said we want to create structures that will allow us to do that. And some local authorities are a long way down this line already. And what we are committed to do is to work with those local authorities that want to do it, that are doing it, to help refine their proposals, if that's helpful, to work with those local authorities that want to do, those sites that want to do it, and haven't thought about it yet, we can give you some ideas about how that will actually work if you want to do it. That's all clear, and I think BIG are comfortable with that. And there are some technical issues that will have to be ironed out with BIG that we're still in the process of working out in terms of where the money goes and how their money goes and how it gets distributed later on and so forth. But the thing I want to stress here, this is the key message coming across now, is it is an option for you to use the bank. It's not a requirement, and it's there's not a on the checklist of things that Lottery are going to be looking for in these bids. They're not going to be saying, oh, there is a bank, give them extra points. If the bank, as part of the argument, really helps to demonstrate the leverage argument, that's really going to help you. But if the bank's just in there and the leverage is all over the place, that's not going to make any difference to you whatsoever. So for those that want to go forward with this, we are committed to providing help and support to help you build up that concept. The bit that we haven't been able to do, that's turned out to be much more complicated than we had anticipated, we're thinking, well, if we're going to do this, and 15 sites may want to do it, let's develop a single tool that you can just pull off the shelf to be able to do this. And let's try and get the best benefits from that, because if all the money comes into a single pot, it might be locally facing, but the money might be kept together. And there'll be all kinds of benefits economically that would come from that by that money being reinvested. We just haven't been able to get anywhere near that because it's just too complicated in all kinds of ways. So that's on the back burner. I should stress, as far as BIG are concerned, it's not kicked into the long grass. It's on the back burner. They see all kinds of benefits to that kind of generally available tool moving forward, but it's going to take us a little while to figure out all that out and see what the legalities are and the complications and so forth. Just one more thing about this, which is, sorry, and I'll bring you in, which is in your in strategy days, you will want to be saying whether you want to use this bank concept or not. But you won't have to have the bank in place when you make the proposition. If you say this is what you want to do, the bank will need to be in place sometime around implementation time and probably towards the end of 2014. So you've got plenty of time to work out the details of it later on. And we will help you, as I said, with that process.
So you're
if you want to.
So you're